get started here. I don't want to waste any time with anything else. I want to get as much time with Paul as we can. And I will probably fail miserably at this introduction. So Paul will be able to fill in any of the gaps that I miss. But Paul is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL and CPO, Arizona peace officer, EMT, Special Projects Team Leader, Anti-Terrorism Force Protection Team Leader, and many, many more credentials that I don't understand, but we'll be asking him about soon. He grew up in Hawaii in a military home and went into the military at age 17. And we're excited to talk to him about his journey, some lessons that he's learned throughout his life experience. And hopefully he'll be sharing some stories of faith and transformation with us that we can all learn from. I've been looking forward to this interview. So let's welcome Paul on the show. Hey, Paul, thanks for coming on.
Hey, how you doing, Laura?
Great. So as I said, I didn't know how to introduce you. I mean, seriously, there are so many acronyms in what you gave me. I don't know the first thing about it. So could you start with what do some of those acronyms mean?
So yeah, I'm humbled when you asked me to come on this. I really am. I told you when we talked a few days ago, I said there's a lot better candidates than myself. You have friends like I'm friends with Jocko Willink. I saw a podcast with Chris Beck, who I knew when I was at Team 3 years ago. He's now become a Christian and has detransitioned. Broke my heart kind of thing. I love the guy. And so many more people had way better credentials than me, smarter, everything. So hopefully we can fill this hour with something that people can take away for sure. But
Yeah.
I guess I'll start from the beginning and how why that led up to me being a SEAL, I guess. So being raised in Hawaii as we call it as a Holly boy, and Holly isn't a bad word. It could be, hey, Holly boy, or it could be, hey, you know, kind of thing. And I tell people Hawaii is the most beautiful place I ever lived, but probably one of the more racist place I ever lived. And it kind of, and I made the decision there. I said, I will never hate somebody for their skin color. I saw for what it was at a young age kind of thing. And oddly enough, the white and black people stuck together when I was young because we were the minorities kind of thing. So I grew up in a pretty violent home. And I tell people Buds was easy for me. I was used to, you know, getting a beat down is kind of, you know, okay, you know, you can survive that. My father, mother, I remember and I'll say this, you know, just because it kind of has to go with what I did later on in life. Going to a nudist colony when I was 14, 15, older brother, both my brothers have passed away. Older brother died of AIDS, younger brother, drugs, jail and stuff. And I turned to sports. And we were all kind of kicked out of the home at an early age, kind of went back and forth. And I left at 17, joined the military, and I joined the Army to meet my dad, Max. He was in the Navy. My dad's retired Mass Chief, love him to death. He passed away too. But I said, I'll show him. I'll join the Army. So I was in the Army for a couple of years and then joined the Navy. And first I went through Buds. I wasn't mature enough and ended up not making it. I was out the island and got in some trouble. And so I went, they sent me to the fleet. They said, you have to go out there for 6 months. You can come back. That turned into 2 years. I then became a hard hat diver and said, you know what? I don't know if I want to be a SEAL. If I don't make it again, oh no. And they sent me to an SDV team as a diver. And so I couldn't get away from it kind of thing. And I had friends there and friends that were in the teams that knew me in Buds. And they said, hey, go back to Buds. And so I went back, made it. I was a class leader and then went to the SEAL teams. Finished on the SEAL teams in 2004 and started contact when I was active duty. Skin got hit and I was hired to teach a counter assault course for Afghanistan, working with some civilian agencies. And did that for a number of years. Then got hired on by a company to teach military free fall. I got about 4,000 jumps, did that for a while, and then started contracting overseas. Spent years in mostly Iraq and Afghanistan, but I was going to the Middle East since the 80s when I first joined the military. And then in the teams, SEAL Team 3, the Middle East, back then, every SEAL team had a section of the world they were responsible for. And that was our responsibility. I love the Middle East. I have a lot of friends out there, a lot of Muslim friends, love them to death. And it gave me a new understanding as in, you know, Laura, you can't choose your parents. You just thank God where you were born. and that you were not born somewhere in a bad place in another country where you're raped at a young age, you have worms and lice, you may or may not have electricity, and that is your life kind of thing, into a hateful ideology that I believe. I study Islam when I was over there. I'll tell you what, the people I knew, very loving. And one thing that they're good at, it's not necessarily war. They're good at suffering. And I mean that is, if anybody spent time over there, and actually not just at a fire base, but outside and seeing the villages and stuff, how these people grow up, it's very rough. But I still have a lot of friends out there. And I got hurt about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was on a special project in another country. And so I've been on medical hold since, and here I am. So that's the long and the short of it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, there were times whenever I was preparing for this interview, like, I'm like, who am I to interview somebody like you, honestly? I mean, I have so much respect and high regard for your service, for what you've done for our country, for your bravery, your sacrifice. I can't even put it into words. So, um, you know, we were talking earlier and you were talking about, there's two ways to go through life. Do you want to lean into that for
Yes.
just a minute? Because I thought that was very, very good.
And I've told my kids this. This was told to me by a Chief Vincer, and this guy, he was our proctor and buds, real strong, quiet, typical SEAL kind of thing. And funny, this guy, he was a Master Chief, and I seen him get in a fist fight with another Master Chief at the pool. It's like boys will be boys, right? But Vincer, he was our proctor, good guy, and he says, okay, and now you go through 2 weeks of pre-training, and during that 2 weeks, you can't quit. And there is hammering you, and it sucks. And your class is overpacked. You got like 120 people. You're in the barracks in a 4-man room, but there's 4 other people in your room on cots. So you have 8 people to a room that was meant to 4. And go through these 2 weeks, and they bring you all in the classroom, and they say, okay, they give you the speech, and he gets up there, and that's when you can quit, kind of thing. And then they start buds, basically. Then you can quit at any time after that. But Vincer gets up there and he says, there's 2 ways to go through buds. The hard way, and he pauses, and now he's got my attention, because if there's an easy way to get through this, sign me up. If I can just get that Budweiser, that Trident, and that play volleyball on the beach, because that's all you know. You don't understand that, well, they're playing volleyball on the beach in the noon because they were working all night on a cold dive somewhere, and you don't see that part of the teams for a reason. And so he says the hard way and the harder way. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't truly understand it till later on. I was going through buds. I was like, okay, we got a 4-mile timed run. We got a 2-mile swim. We got the O course. Let me save a little bit, because that way I can put out a little here, and it was actually harder when I said, you know what? I'm going to put out as hard as I can on every evolution. And if I don't make it, so be it. If I don't have enough at that end to do that, and actually buds got easier when I said, you know what, go all in. And I'll say this, the same thing with your Christian walk. I was half in, half out for so many years. I was like a Sunday Christian, the check mark in the box, just in case I got killed. Okay, I'll go to heaven, kind of thing. Just living 2 different lives, and it just tore me apart for such a long time. And I got a story about that later on, I'll tell you. It remind me about when I was a skydiving instructor, and we had a double fatality that night. But go ahead.
No, I think you're doing great. I was just going to ask you, based on your experience, you talk about, suffering and struggle. It sounds like you've had your share of that. What is one of the biggest things you've learned from struggle? Have you learned, obviously you've learned how to embrace it, but how have you been able to use it to your advantage, perhaps, in your life?
So, you'd hear different things. I was really fortunate to go through some really good schools, working for some agencies out of DC. And one of their sayings was, embrace the suck. And basically, like, hey, this is going to suck. And when you go all in and say, you know what, just do it, and embrace that, don't shy away from it, because you're going to go through it anyway. I guess if you have the option to quit, but a lot of things in life we don't. And I think the suffering part, you can compare things. Every frogman has Hell Week in common. We've all been through Hell Week. But truth be told, you go through harder things after that, because when you're doing real things, even if it's training, we have people that die in training, unfortunately, because we train so real. So when you do the real thing, it's like training for a fight. I used to do competitive jiu-jitsu and stuff and loved it. And you would train hard. Okay, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna, I normally weigh 200 pounds and I weigh in at 184. I'm like, I'm gonna make this guy pay for making me diet like that, and you train so hard, and you go in and you perform, and a lot of times you do well. Now there's gonna be a winner and loser, but if you put out as hard as you could, then it's all good. So having those experiences, what's helped me is you can compare those to other life experiences. I tell my son, I press you for a reason. So because I'm not going to be there when you're talking to your boss one day, or you're one-on-one with somebody in school, you're going to have to deal with this. And if I've already pressed you to a certain point, then hopefully you can reflect on that, and that'll help carry you through. You got to make the decision though, but hopefully that'll help carry you through.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because we all go through that, on various levels throughout our life. And so, part of me says, what do I have in common with someone when like you? Well, we do have some things in common, just on different scales, I think, right? And
Sure.
I'm obviously at a different scale than you are, but they're very similar lessons to be learned on different levels. Um, One of the things I want to talk to you about is, my husband's reading this book, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it's about leadership. And one of the qualities this guy talks about in leadership is humbleness, humility. And so, what are some of the characteristics, and what does leadership mean to you, given your experience? And obviously, you being a great leader in the eyes of many people, what does leadership mean to you?
So I don't have a really short answer to that.
You don't
I've
have to.
I've been so fortunate to have great leaders that I saw in action. John McTighe, he was a SEAL officer. Pete Van Hoosier, a one-legged SEAL. We're doing, on the East Coast, every SEAL team has this little monster match they call it on a Friday. They have a long run with a rucksack or a long swim or something, right? It's team camaraderie and everything. And I was at SEAL Team 4, and we go on these 8-mile runs with a rucksack with I think it was a 45-pound plate or 35, whatever it was. And you do that, and then you do a swim. Well, being a frogman and stuff, hey, it's a good time and everything. And I see Pete Van Hoosier, he's coming out of the water, and I was a bosun mate. That was my rate before they came up with SEAL rate. And he goes, "Hey, Boats." He says, "Hey, I think something's wrong with my leg." And his foot was backwards. He had his foot like the fin foot. He had a running foot because he had one leg, right? So his foot was backwards. I'm like, "No, sir, it looks good on you," kind of thing. And this is the guy who said, "Hey," he got all the chiefs together. I was a chief then. He says, "This is the required reading material you're going to do. It's going to help you be a better leader." Things like Gates of Fire, different. And here's what I've noticed too: the great leaders that I didn't really know it, they didn't really profess it, but were God-fearing men. I found out later on, kind of thing. John McTighe, here's a guy who would serve. And I'm like, here's a commanding officer. What's he doing serving me, kind of thing? And as far as like his attitude and how I'm going to help you be better. He came to my house when I re-enlisted when I was a skydiving instructor out of Yuma. And I was trying to get to my special SEAL team. And he ended up going out there, or he was there and came back or something. But, here's a guy who travels all the way to Yuma just to re-enlist me. Guys that put out above and beyond, help my family out. We were talking earlier. He said, "Hey, while you're deployed, if Liz needs something, Pampers for the baby, whatever, let me know." And he wasn't just saying it. Here's a guy who's taking care of his team, which humbled me. It's very humbling when you're an E5 at a SEAL team, the commanding officer knows you by name and says, "Hey, I'm here to help you," kind of thing. You'd be an idiot and he's going to hammer you. And if you're, and I was lucky because I got hammered a lot because I was an idiot a lot of times. but they saw something that was moldable, I think, and so they'd
Mm.
hammer me, but kept me around. Never
Mhm.
processed me out of the military because I was not salvageable, I guess, and I thank God for that. It opened doors for me afterwards with contract and everything else. I did executive protection before for a multi-billionaire. So this is a long time ago. I'll say what his name is. His name is Les Wexner, and he owns Victoria's Secrets and some other companies. So I do his maritime work, his yacht work, and people, oh, it must be nice, models. Like, no, we're on there with his family. He's there with his wife and his 4 kids, and you're basically doing whatever they want. You're escorting them everywhere. You're keeping them safe from embarrassment or whatever. Oh, by the way, hey Paul, I want to go to lunch, over in France. I'm like, yes, sir. You're getting the limo, the helicopter, that you're setting all this stuff up, and a billionaire doesn't know the word no. And once again, the family itself was very humble. They treated me very well, and their security team. They didn't have to. So to answer your question, I picked up on a lot of these traits because I saw how I was treated, and they didn't have to. They could have treated me a little differently, and it would have been fine. But here are great men that set a good example for me, and that's carried into my own family life with my son. My son started calling me sir at a young age. I said, hey, I don't require that. Just call me daddy. He goes, oh no, sir, I respect you. I mean, it was kind of strange, but I respect my son. It isn't something I just require from him, like you will say this or whatever. Like, no.
Mhm.
And that means that he in turn is respectful to me for sure. And it's helped me in my family life and give me a new understanding for sure.
Well, that's one thing that I've noticed about you as I've talked to you in these shorter conversations before the live was that you said something to the effect of, I'm no one special. I've just been fortunate to be surrounded by great people who've seen great potential in me. And that really struck me because uh, I think having that sort of attitude, again, no matter what rank you are or no matter where you are in life, is just so advantageous. Just to have gratitude for those around you, to be willing to serve those around you, no matter what your role is. But just really good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I said, I was just fortunate to have good role models, and a couple were not good, and so I learned what
Hmm.
not to do.
Yeah, because you
But,
said you came from a home that wasn't so great, right?
yeah, and like I said, I love my mom and dad to death and everything. And before my dad
Hmm.
passed away, my dad was very, very brilliant. He spoke 7 different languages. He should have been an officer in the military. He retired as a master chief, but he it was different growing up. I'll say it just wasn't hard. I was getting the belt till I was in high school. I mean, just bruised up, and just kind of like, kicked out of the home. Me and my brothers. It was violent with my mom and stuff. Being scared kind of thing. And then one
Hmm.
day standing up and saying, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. And my
Hmm.
thing was, like I said, I just escaped, and we all did. And
Yeah.
later on in life, I talked to my dad, and I became very good friends with him, and we got a different relationship, and
Hmm.
his life changed. He became a Christian, and we could talk. And it was unfortunate because he passed away like a year later, kind of thing. But
Mm.
yeah, just the good people I've had in my life that God has put there, and I was, I guess. Um, I was able to absorb some of their teachings and then later on, recall them, and it helped me out in a lot of situations.
Yeah. I had a good question, Adam. What are you doing there?
Hey, Paul, if I can jump in here, right? You've gone through Buds and a lot more, right? Buds was simply the beginning, basic underwater demolition school for Navy SEALs. You've witnessed excellence over and over. You've had to live that life of excellence to be able to stay a Navy SEAL. Can you talk to us about what it takes, the deep digging into the soul it takes to climb to the highest peaks of human performance and human mentality, and then also for the same type of thing for the spiritual aspect of retaining a high level of commitment both to your God and to your morals?
So when I was a young frogman, you want to fit in. You're doing things that everybody else is doing, and they're not very godly, quite honestly. You just don't want to be that guy that is the outsider, because now are you going to get in the platoon that you want to be in? Are you going to go on the trips? Are you going to do these things? And I saw men that stood up also that didn't necessarily play that game, but were good SEALs. And I learned that what helped me get through a lot of this is buds itself. People ask, well, how do you get through that? How do you go through what drives that force? When I came to the realization of all in, when I say, you know what, no matter what, I'm all in, and buds got easier. And in your Christian walk, I was a coward a lot of times, because when I started getting close to God, I'd get attacked. And I'm like, okay, bad things are happening and stuff. But if I'm living worldly, then honestly, there wasn't a lot of attacks. You still go through things, but not if you are doing what's right. And so I came to a point in life, I said, what am I doing? God is stronger than I'm giving him credit for, and he's allowing these things. He isn't like helpless or whatever. And what do I need to do? If I'm training for a job in a SEAL team, okay, my weapons, let me check. Okay, my comms, my intel, my uniform. So why wouldn't I train on the spiritual side? Well, where do you get that information? You have to renew your mind, your spirit, by cleaning it, by getting into the word. You get surprised. I was like, why am I going through this or this? Well, when I'm putting junk in my ears, what I listen to, into my eyes, the windows of the soul, things I'm watching I shouldn't be watching, well, then don't be surprised when you're trying to, go church on Sunday and live a different way every day else. It's not going to work. Same thing with being a SEAL. You're just not a SEAL one day a week. I'm in there on Saturday on a weekend. I'm cleaning my gear. I have it all spread out. I'm WD-40 my magazines or whatever. I'm getting things ready just in case. The Christian walk, you should be memorizing scripture. That's how you fight. Going to war, the training ops, everything. Those are hard things, but what's harder is the internal fight inside, that flesh. And Paul talks about it. And the things I tell you, don't do, I do. And he struggles with it, and it gives me hope. So I would say, hey, you know what? Don't be afraid. Go all in. There's gonna be things that you can't control. Death and taxes, they say, right? You're gonna die. You're gonna die. Just go all in, and and life will start to. You'll have peace. I'm not gonna say easiness, but peace, which a byproduct of that is joy and then happiness, of course. But yeah, that'd be what I would, I guess, advise.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, you said earlier something about you lived part of your life with one foot in and one foot out. Did you have an experience or a moment in which that changed, that transformation happened for you?
I'm pretty.
Is that a series of events?
Yeah, I'm pretty hard-headed.
No
God,
way.
yeah, it's been a blessing and it's been a curse kind of thing. I don't give up. I keep going. I'm driving. I'm just gonna. But also in other areas where I need to let something go and I don't. So I'll tell you a story that first got my attention where God was real. So I'm out at Yuma and I first get there and I have a couple hundred jumps. So I think I'm an expert pretty much. And I'm not, of course. And we have a night jump and I'm not allowed to jump with students yet because you have to go through a certain process and training and stuff before you're allowed to do that. And it was an Army command. And the guy, I forget who was teaching up. We're up in a casa and there's 10 students up there. And he goes, hey, I'm going to push these guys out and you can't jump with the students, but give us about 10 seconds and then you can jump out and then do whatever you want. And, so be it. Cool. So they leave. I'm watching them and see the chem lights go and stuff. It's around midnight, 1 a.m. And I give myself a little count. I jump out. Cool. I'm floating, going down to earth and I flip on my back. I look at the stars and the moon and stuff. Turn back over, and they call it throwing out. It's a little pilot chute that you pull out and throw, and nothing was happening. And so I go to check, and I got this chem light that's on my helmet, and it's kind of getting loose, and it's going back and forth, bang. I can't see anything. This thing's banging me by the face. And so I'm stupid. I should have cut away right away, but I go and I check again. I try to elbow it or whatever, and then I end up cutting away. Well, you have a cypress that's on your reserve that senses speed and altitude. So if it says you're falling through a certain altitude at a certain speed, it's like, oh, you must not have a parachute out. And it's a little explosive device that actually a charge goes off and your reserve comes out. So I cut away, and I didn't beat my cypress because it had fired as well when I was cutting away. And and when you jump in the desert, everything's quiet. So right when that reserve opened, it's meant to open now. So it's like whack, and you're at terminal velocity. And I heard my D bag, and that's what your parachute is packed into. I heard my D bag right when it opened up, and then I heard a punk, like the D bag hit the ground. So I was, I don't know, probably 600-800 feet, and that's nothing as far as how far you are from dirt poisoning, right? So I land, and I try to make it back to the shade structure, but I couldn't make it back very far. And I go back there. It's nighttime. I don't know where it's at and stuff. And I go back the next morning, and I get it and everything. President Bush had me jumping in that day. I see Barbara Bush out there by the packing mat, and I recognize some of the Secret Service guys, and I got to talk to her. It was really cool. So there goes my free fall career. I'm an instructor there. I start getting a lot of jumps, 1,000 jumps, 2,000 jumps. I get really good. I end up, I was about normally 190, 200 pounds. I was always kind of, I was a bodybuilder back then and stuff. And so I would jump the heavier guys. I would not jump the lighter guys. And they were by numbers where you were. And so number one would be, a guy, Buck 05 soaking wet. And he was a boat guy, but he had all these DVDs. And so I made friends with him because I wanted to copy him. Otherwise, I would have never known the guy. And I mention this because we had a fatality that night, and his name was Sean Mustard and my friend Chris Schaefer. So I got in trouble the day prior because I'm always getting in trouble, and I'm hooking it in or something. We had this little styrofoam cup with $1 in it. And so the deal was to try to hit that thing with your foot. And you get really good, And I had hooked it in real hard and came in. I got the $1 and stuff. And well, the sergeant major saw it. He goes, "That's it. You're grounded." I'm like, good. I didn't break anyway. So I had to pull dirt, they call it, that night. And I'm watching the guys get out of the airplane, and I'm calling in the radio. Yep, 10 good canopies, blah, blah, go on through the night. Well, I hear a whack kind of thing when guys jump out. And I'm like, wow, that sounded like a hard opening. But at the time, I wouldn't have known that in the ground, but I didn't put it together yet. And I see some kind of chem lights kind of go like that, and don't think much of it because I still have 10 or 12 good canopies, whatever it was. And students are landing, they're calling in, I'm checking them off and stuff. It's nighttime. And I see an instructor canopy that's going downwind. There's no wind, but he's going downwind.
Yeah.
I figure he's probably chasing a student or something. And so all the students, there's nobody left in the air. They're still checking in. I tell one of the instructors, hey, can you take over for me? I'm going to go on the four-wheeler and go get one of the instructors so you don't have to walk back. He's like, cool. So I go out there, and now I'm out there, and there's nothing. And you get that weird sense kind of thing. And I mean, it's very quiet, and I'm driving around, and I turn the machine off in case, he's hurt or something. I can hear him, cry out for help or something, and nothing. So I go around, I'm looking for this guy. And then I see a shadow of the canopy that's completely downwind. And I just finished EMT school and stuff. And I get off the four-wheeler, I run up there, and he's probably 500-600 meters from the shade structure. So you can't see him. It's a desert with scrub brush and stuff. And it's my friend Chris. And I roll him over, and his face is completely concave, busted up. I mean, it was just a mush. And right away, it was like, oh, I don't want to put mouth on him. I kind of laughed myself a little bit, I'm like, good grief, that's the first thing that came to my mind. But he was dead. He was obviously dead. And so then I called back, and you don't want to say that in the radio. I said, hey, I need a corpsman up here. Give me an 18 Delta. And so they come running up, and they know what the deal is. And they said, hey, we're missing a student also. I'm like, what? And so we had good canopies, but what happened was, we think what happened, you can tell by the blood spray on the canopy and stuff, they hit in midair. One was maybe pulling his parachute out, started slowing down. The other one went through it. Hard to say what happened, but one hit the other, knocked it so hard, maybe the pins came out or whatever. So they were both dead under canopy. Full canopy, brakes stowed, and just kind of, going into the ground. So found Sean. Sean was about 2 miles away because he was lighter, so he had a bigger canopy, and he's going to go farther. And so the next day, so I started drinking kind of thing. And the sergeant major comes up to me and says, hey, we still got a day of, or we still have the night jumps. We can graduate these guys. Should we wait? Well, he's asking me. And I said, well, I think we should get these guys in the air right now. And I didn't want to go in the air. I was like, I just wanted to break, but no, and the right call was to go up there now. He goes, yeah, you're right. We need to get up there. So we got the students up that night. We got them all there. We had about 10 or 20 of them just quit. I mean, double fatality, right? They just quit. And there was a new instructor there, my friend Jeff, and he was new there, and he looked kind of freaked out about it, and I was freaked out. I just wasn't saying anything, and I said, "Hey, want me to take your stick up for you?" And I already finished my I jumped my guys. I'm like, "Yes, I cheated death again. Like I don't have to jump tonight. I'm good." And he goes, "Yeah, if you could take my stick up." And I'm like, "Oh," I was thinking to myself, like, I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So I took his stick up and came down and stuff. And I went to Mexico, and I stayed there for like 2 or 3 days, and I was just drinking. And I wasn't really drunk. It was weird. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was just drinking. And a Marine comes to my house, and one of my friends, and he's like, "Hey, man, you got to get to work, and blah blah. Like, let's get you right." And so I go to work, and there's a psychologist there, and some lady, and she's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Oh, good grief, this is all we need, right?" I mean, and it wasn't going over well. And so the widow, Chris's wife, came up to me and said, "Hey, Paul, Chris had his wedding ring on, but it wasn't on his body." I said, "Hey, look, we take our jewelry off when we jump, because if I'm hanging on a ramp or a door, if I'm flying video or something, if you have a ring, it can get caught and you can lose a finger." So I said, "Don't wear jewelry." And she goes, "Well, he always wore his ring." And I said, "Well, okay, we'll take a look." And so I got the boys together. I was kind of a ringleader wherever I went, right? I said, however that works.
Got the boys together.
Yeah. And I said, okay, we spread about 100 feet apart, and we're on the desert floor, and there's scrub brush and stuff and no trees, but you can't see past 20 or 30 feet as far as, looking out there. And I said, let's just walk like for a mile. And I'll realize that happened up at altitude. I'm not sure, we're guessing 4,000 feet or maybe, 6, whatever it was they were pulling at. And they went in different directions. And that ring, if that's where it came off because of the violent impact, who knows where it is? It'll never be found, right?
Yeah.
I have a Tupperware container of wine I'm drinking. Like I said, I've been drinking for a few days. So I'm drinking on the job kind of thing and walking down the desert. And we've been out there about an hour. I'm walking. I'm like, okay, this is about enough of this. And something tells me to look down to my right. And in a half buried scrub brush was his wedding ring, halfway buried. And it wasn't shiny like a gold. It was gold. It wasn't like glaring at me. And I've told the story 2 or 3 times before, and I would cry. I don't now. I thank goodness. It just, for whatever reason, it broke me. And I think because God became real to me at that moment. Like, hey, you need to get your act together. You're still here. There's things that need to be done. And found his ring and was able to give it to the widow. And that wouldn't be the first time that's happened to me. Later on in life, I was in Hawaii. That's where I'm from. Me and my wife were on vacation out there because we live in the mainland now. And I'm walking along the beach down at Waianae Rest Camp, and it looked like a bottle cap that was, as the waves come up kind of thing. It's like an inch of water as it comes up and goes back down. It looks like there's a bottle cap or something in the sand. So I reached down, pick it up, and it was a ring. And it looked silver, kind of like costume jewelry. And I'm like, I'll just take that with me, and then I'll see what it is later on. So I go back to the cabin in the afternoon. I actually get my glasses and look at it, and it has like a P and an L or something, and it has a Bible verse. And I'm like, So I look it up. Well, it's platinum, right? And unbeknownst to me, platinum's expensive. And this was a huge, like, it was a big wedding ring. And so I go to the front desk. I say, hey, we went home. That's right. So I go home to Maui, and that's when I looked all this stuff up. It was a couple days later, and I realized what I had. I call up the Wine Rest camp. I said, "Hey, I found this wedding ring, platinum." She goes, "Oh, there was a guy who lost it out here 6 months ago. He was a pastor. He was baptizing people in waist deep water when he lost it."
Oh,
And I was able to contact him. Now this is 6 months, and now it's washed up on the shore, and it
yeah.
happens where. And so once again, I don't know what it is with me and wedding rings. Certainly God got a hold of me, but I was still stupid. I was still going back and forth between my Christian walk and my worldly walk, and it was such
Mhm.
a struggle. It was bad in my marriage. I met my wife in high school. Been with her since she was 17, and love her to death. We have a beautiful marriage, but only when I realized what my job as a husband was. I thought it was, hey, we make babies and we do this. I provide the money, and but no, and what being a man really is. And I didn't really understand it. And I tell you, you get into the word and it explains it, and then your marriage gets good. There's still problems because we live in a broken world, and I'm broken and you're broken. But I wish I would have learned this lesson earlier, but I hate to say it, I probably wouldn't have listened. And so that I actually made a decision a couple years ago when I said, you know what, I need to get my act together. And me and my wife were on the verge of just kind of doing one of these once again. And we both, my wife is an incredibly strong Christian now. Okay, we're doing our devotion this morning, or, we will go through things, and it's things aren't lingering anymore with anger or anything. It's just, I struggle with things, and I've been released from a lot of those things. And I still have these struggles, but I'm not enslaved to it anymore. Um,
Mm.
and I was for such a long time. And I just thank God that I'm not.
Yeah, you did. You talked about that earlier about walking through the darkness and that, you have some friends that didn't make it through that darkness, whereas you said you did, and it sounds like, you have a reason, that you think you did.
Yeah. So two of my friends a few months ago. Now I've lost friends in combat, and that's expected. Recently, my friend Goody, he was working on a contract overseas, and I knew Goody from Buds, and he got killed, and different guys, SEALs, Acceleration 17. When I say I know these guys, I know their wives, I know their kids, I know them. It wasn't just an acquaintance at a SEAL team. I know guys like that too that have passed, but that's expected. But when you find out a guy who's a senior enlisted or senior officer that did stellar in the teams, that was a good, and then commits suicide, it takes it out of you. My friend Mark Crampton and Doug McNutt, I found out a few months ago they had committed suicide, and it really broke me. Now, I didn't know these guys. I knew Doug lived across the street from me. I knew his wife Mary and his kids and stuff. And Mark, who he married at the SEAL team there was a lady working there, very nice, and I knew both of them. But we never went to barbecues together and stuff, so I didn't know them on that level, but certainly knew them very well. And then more recently, two more, Mike Day and another guy, we call him Taco. And unfortunately, I've been in that chair sitting there looking at the other side of a Glock. And
Mm.
and I can tell you, Laura, you can physically feel the darkness coming in. Not spiritually, not hyperbole, not. I can tell you it was. And my wife found me, and she got upset, and like, "What are you doing?" And started like yelling at me, kind of thing. Like, and that's probably what I needed. Not like, "Oh, okay, like, what are you doing?" And
Mhm.
God convicted me of that later on that day. And like, hey, you go to war and you go to combat and people get killed and stuff. So, but who are you to take your own life, the life that I gave? Who
Mm.
are you to, and it really hit home with me. It's probably one of the darkest places I ever been. And I was giving up on life. I was done with the battle. I was done with the problems I had with my marriage, with things going through. I have one of our children. She's a female in the military, and she's married to another lady. And we raised our kids in a Christian home, and things. I was done with the world, Laura. I was
Mm.
done. And I told my wife, I just want to go home. And she goes, we'll send you back home to Hawaii. I'm like, no, I want to go home, like to the Lord. Like, I'm just done. And God spoke to me later on. And it's like, this life has been kind of like a continual hell week. Like, hey, hang in there. You're almost there. We're almost there. And I see things going on today that you can arguably say, well, you could say the end times were a decade ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, but no, never before has it been on a global realm where it's just not our nation somewhere else. You have a global push for this one world religion, currency, the wokeism, we're going backwards. Hey, your value is your skin color, not your character. It's just, when I used to do a lot of jujitsu. I told you, loved it. On the wall there, and any saying from Confucius or Buddha or whatever, those aren't from those guys. You get them from the Bible. And that's where, you can see it. Like, no, that comes from the Bible. But one of the sayings that his name is Frank Cucci, great SEAL, God-fearing man, one of my mentors as well. And I love Frank because as a man and a SEAL, if I had a problem with him, he could we weren't going to get fired unless you were really stupid. But you could hey, let's take it out on the mat. And I appreciate that, And then Frank had told me one time, he says, don't mistake kindness for weakness. And he had this saying on his wall. He said, be careful of your thoughts, because your thoughts become words. Be careful of your words become actions, and your actions show your character. And that was on his dojo wall. That's biblical. It talks about the birth of sin, and I forget where it's at in the Bible, but when temptation, when you entertain that, and then you birth out of that sin. So these are all biblical principles. And looking back, like I mentioned earlier, about these great men that were instrumental in my life, these were biblical principles, but for sure. And the things that we speak now, I have peace knowing that the word will not leave void. And I don't know what's heard and what's not, that I just trust God that his will be done.
Amen to that.
Yeah, the guys that knew me in the teams years ago would not know the Paul today. I'll tell you that. It's just, I was always, if you weren't laughing, you were crying. You do a lot of hard things in the teams. I was talking to my friend Lou Langlis. He got killed in Extortion 17, and I was in Green Team. I was teaching jumping. I was a contractor. I was never there as a shooter, but I was there contracting and around really good guys. And Lou was like, yeah, man, I'm down with Jesus, kind of thing, And we used to call Lou Lucifer. That was his nickname when we did together in the Middle East. And we were wild back then. It was wild, right? And where's I going with this? My mind goes sometimes, but
that's all right. That's all right.
But anyway, go ahead.
Well, we've got a few questions here. So guys, we're getting towards the end of the broadcast here. We've got a few questions, but if you have anything you want to ask Paul, I have a feeling he won't be afraid to answer it. So put whatever your question is in the comments, and we'll get to you here in just a second. Are you good with that, Paul? Do you want to go to the Q&A here and see what questions people have?
Let's play Stump the Chump. I mean, I'm good. Spot.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so let's see. It looks like Adam put, Paul, what do you advise that people need to do to be a high performer in both life and as a shooter and defender, yet also maintain a strong relationship with God?
So people confuse, and I mentioned earlier, kindness and weakness. Being a shooter, you got to go out and practice. You want to be a good shooter. Yeah. Running helps, doing calisthenics, reading about it, but nothing makes you a better shooter than getting out there and putting rounds down range. You want to get close with the Lord. You want to live a more godly life. It's not be perfect. You're going to stumble. That we're broken, but if you're not in the Word, then don't expect to grow. These are, I think, simple answers to quite honestly simple questions. Shooting, there's a good 4 or 5 basic techniques. Then there's 1,000 more little things. I was told by one of my friends, Hans, good sniper. He said, there's no such thing as advanced shooting skills. There's only good basics. Now here's a SEAL Team 6 sniper guy. And you look at that. If you don't have good basics, you can't go anywhere else. If you don't have good basic Christian foundation, you're going to fall and stumble at the slightest thing that comes your way. It's important that you understand what you read when you read the word. And if you don't, research it. And if you can't get it, then don't worry about it, because God doesn't want you maybe to understand at that time. Let it go and continue on. That'd be the answer to that.
Yeah, there's times that you're made not to understand for a reason.
It truly is. I've been reading the Bible for years, and I'm like, where's the book of Jude or something? I'm like, well, I guess God doesn't really want me to, now I can find it, but I just kind of realized, like, where do you want me to go in this as I do a study or something?
Yeah. All right, next question. Prepperines. Okay, here goes. That's quite the disclaimer. What would be one of those moments in your years where you were like, this is real bad, if you can speak of it? What was happening and how did you push through it?
So my first small little skirmish was in Sri Lanka. This was in the early 90s. I was in training cell and was picked because all the platoons were busy doing stuff, and guys got mad because they're like, how did you get picked to go on this? I'm in a platoon, you're in training cell. I'm like, I don't know. So we got picked to go to Sri Lanka to do an MTT, it's called. So we go there with an Army A team, and we're training them, the Sinhalese, how to fight the Tamil Tigers. This is a real thing. So we train them during the day, and at nighttime they're going out, they're doing stuff, they're coming back, we debrief them, okay, what happened and stuff. The Spetsnaz were training the bad guys up north in the Jaffna Forest, and we were training the good guys further down south. It was such a mishmash of stuff. You had an AK, a magazine, I don't even think we had a pistol, and you had if something really went bad, try to make it to the embassy kind of thing. I mean, the E&E plan was shaky at best. It was kind of, this is the early 90s, right? And we're teaching Vietnam tactics. I've never been shot at before. I'm a new guy, basically. I've done a couple platoons, but I'm by no means a seasoned vet. Not after, after 9/11, all that stuff changed. But everybody got bad fever one night, and Jocko was there, Jocko Willink, and a few other guys. And one of the mass chiefs was there, and he goes, hey, you look like crap, dude. And I was throwing up and everything, both sides and stuff, and just horrible. And he goes, hey, I'll take your squad out on patrol if you want to just hang back. I'm like, cool, man. So I had my AK. I'm by this bush. It's kind of raining a little bit. I'm just trying to sleep. I'm like, my stomach hurts and everything. I'm like, I just want to die right here, basically. Right? You're just sick, right? And so I'm in the bush. I'm kind of just trying to get some sleep. And I hear this. I'm like, what's going on kind of thing? I kind of wake up. I come to. I see guys sprinting past me, right? Like Bugs Bunny and the Tasmanian Devil when the animals are coming by. And my friend Matt Piotrowski, Warren Piotrowski, he's a short little fat guy. He's just running. I'm like, hey, what's going on? He goes, what do you think is going on? We're being shot at. So I grab my gun and we get online, and we're out in the open. There's like rice paddies and stuff, and like it's like a field and another part of the forest. So the Sinhalese come up and he's like, hey, Mr. Paul, what's going on? And I said, hey, he's coming from over here, whatever. I see one of the Army guys get up, and he runs out in the open. And like, as a SEAL, we're taught to never let somebody go by themselves. And I just automatically went with him, stupid, and dived down by this dike kind of thing. I'm like, what are you doing? And oh, it's blah, 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 whatever. So anyway, at the end of the little thing, and we're not even sure what it was kind of thing, what was going on. But I felt really alone because nobody was going to come and get us. We were by ourselves. And this is when the whole Clinton thing came up about, I did not have sexual relations with, and I'm like, nobody cares. I felt real alone kind of thing. Like, no one's coming you don't have fire support on a ship somewhere. You're not calling in on a helo or nothing. And this is all before cell phone stuff and everything. So yeah, that was probably one of my more alone moments for sure. Probably some of Lou Langus, that's the story I was telling. Lou was at SEAL Team 6, and Lou's combat vet. I think he was Gold Team guy. And he was saying, Paul, the only thing that compares to combat, and I told guys this, is doing a night combat equipment jump, O2, on an unknown DZ. I'm like, amen, brother. I mean, it's scary. Like, you're up in the plane, you're all jocked up, you're sweaty kind of thing, but they open the door, it's cold, you're on O2, dark at night somewhere, you're waddling over with all your stuff on, you're jumping out, you're like, okay, hopefully I'm stable, yep, you're good to go. And the next thing is like, hopefully my parachute opens up. And the next thing is hopefully I'm not going to land somewhere like, on a ravine or a cactus or whatever kind of thing. And there's all these different variations go on. But probably my more hairy moments were that and doing night dives, Draeger and harbors, with things that can go wrong there. So yeah, there's I guess a few different things where when that little thing happened in Sri Lanka, you just do what you're trained to do. You don't really think about it later on. So it wasn't really that bad. And
Is that a focus on what you can control kind of a situation?
Yeah, and that's kind of about it. There's been guys that've been in long firefights and doing different things, and they got different stories about it. I never have, so I'm not sure how that would pan out. Maybe talk to maybe some like Jocko or something, he could tell you. But yeah, the scarier times, I guess, for me, doing those night combat equipment O2 jumps or the dark of night, some harbor somewhere, and doing our job or something. Yeah.
But you just do what you're trained to do. That's
Yeah,
that's
and then
why you train so heavily. So you default to that training, I assume.
well, I'll tell you, when I first was contracting, I found out, okay, I'm going back overseas. And I'm like, man, I don't want to go back to the Middle East kind of thing. I was done with it. I definitely don't want to go as a contractor. Like, there's some meatballs, like, who am I being stuck with? You can't choose your team. I don't know these guys kind of thing. And I had a lot of anxiety. I ended up going to Iraq, and it was easy. And then ended up going after that to Afghanistan. And I'm driving in town, and some of our black sites in Iraq, I'm up by Syria and Turkey and doing some different things and stuff, and never thought twice about it, quite honestly. Some of the other sites, we'd have to take a helo at night for safety kind of thing. Different things would go on and stuff. So, but you're a contractor, and that's a little different than being a SEAL team. SEAL teams, you're a little more protected, I think, because the guys you're with, the equipment you have, the assets you have. You're in the military, something happens, things happen. You're a contractor, not so much.
Trish wants to know if it's common to have skydiving fatalities, or how common are they?
I'm not sure if that question is worded correctly. I'll say it happens. Common. Let me see. I was out there for 4 years because I extended to finish a degree out there. That's where I became a cop in my off time. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 fatalities. So about one a year, the average, I guess. Now we're putting through 30 students a month. And then with the instructors jumping and other people jumping out there, you got the Golden Knights, you got a lot of different things with the military going on out there. So I'm not sure if that's high or not, but it does happen.
It says, Paul, you've been deployed a lot, gone for much of the time. How did you maintain your family and your marriage?
Ooh, man. So this was a tough one for us, but the money helped. I'll say that. I would go for 2 months and come home for 2 months. We were homeschooling our child. So it'd be a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. We lived on Maui. Hey, let's go to the beach and surf. Hey, let's go do this. I was making good money, so we had the money to go do things. But when I was gone, I struggled with the things that men struggle with. I'll say that. And it was tough. One way it was really good for my marriage because I'd come back and it was like a honeymoon again. Me and my wife, we didn't argue about little things like the coffee maker wasn't working or something. But when I got hurt in Iraq in 2012, got medevac and had to come back and get some surgeries. And I was home for about 1.5 years. And man, we started kind of arguing after about 6 months and kind of like nitpicking. And she wasn't used to me being home. Now, I told you, I've been with her since she was 17. I joined the military at 17. So all she's known is me going away kind of thing. Here recently, I got hurt about 1.5 years ago now, maybe 2 years. I've been home. And God's really been purging a lot of poison out of my life and showing me how to be a husband for sure. And her, to my wife, it's been a new chapter in our life, and it's been very difficult. But being gone was both a blessing, and it was very hard at the same time. I mean, we had really good times because we had the money, and we didn't, because I know I was going away again, and I wasn't just going to someplace nice, I was going to black sites and working out there. And sometimes I stay in the wire. Other times I'm outside the wire doing things, and guys get killed, guys get blown up, shot at. I've been mortared a few times. That happens. I mean, the big booms. You can't do anything about that. You're walking somewhere and boom, and here it comes. So yeah.
Okay. Prepperies wants to know if you know a man named Dan Carrillo, who was a Navy SEAL who just passed away.
So I know Taco just passed away. I can't remember his real name. If that's who he's talking about, committed suicide. I think it was last week. If that's the guy he's talking about.
Okay. The George Washington picture behind you, would you tell us about that and why you chose that to be behind you for this broadcast?
So one reason was because this is my bedroom and I have stuff behind there, and I'm not sure who can see what kind of thing. So I had that picture up, and we moved here a couple of years ago, and we still are unpacking. The George Washington picture behind me, man, he's praying at Valley Forge, and if you Google that, there's actually a spy that's watching this behind a tree. There's a complete story behind this whole picture, and the spy was sent there to kill him, and he hears George Washington praying for his enemies, and this breaks the guy, and the guy doesn't kill him, of course. And it's an amazing story. Google it, and it's very good. Yeah, one of my heroes.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Laura wants to know, she says, I'm studying Exodus. Do you have a favorite New or Old Testament chapter or story that speaks to you?
I'm a big Genesis fan. I love studying Genesis. That's where it all happened. And I think the whole Bible hinges on Genesis, I think chapters 1 through 7 myself. Old Testament can be kind of hard sometimes to read. There's a lot of good stuff in the New Testament I've been following, but I like Genesis. I like the 7 days. I follow Ken Ham. If you ever heard of him, Answers in Genesis. He has the real life ark in Kentucky. It's a real life ark, and he goes over the whole thing with why it's important to understand it's 7 literal days and not evolution. And so that's Genesis.
Cool. Well, we are technically over the hour, but I mean, I could spend hours and hours talking to you, Paul. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with tonight? Maybe that we haven't covered yet, or just something on your heart that you wanted to share before we leave?
Yeah. Don't quit. I've quit before, and you quit once, it gets easier to quit again. But also knowing that I don't ever want to visit that again. Stay strong, because a righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up. You stay in the fight, spiritually and physically. God has blessed us with things, with a body, with this world. Even though it's broken, we're here to take care of it. Take care of yourself. Do what you can. You have control over working out. You have control over your mind, what you see and watch, what you study. You don't have control over if you're driving to school or work one day and somebody hits you and you get killed in the crash. You don't have control over that, so don't worry about it. Keep strong with life and keep in the fight. When you fall, you get back up and be the frog man that God called you to be, or the frog woman.
I love that, Paul. Well, thank you so much for your time. You've been an absolute pleasure to have on, and boy, that hour went by fast.
I talk a lot. I apologize. Good grief. It's like a lecture I give one of my kids.
No, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I think our audience has too. Everyone has pretty much stayed to the end of the whole thing here. So I think it's been time well spent. And again, thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your time and for your heart and sharing it with us tonight.
I appreciate it, and it's very humbling being on your show. And hopefully, somebody got something from this. And thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, guys. So I'm going to let you know what we're going to expect for next week here real quick. I did want to shout out again about the Defenders Live website. But hey, if you guys want to help support Defenders Live, go to defenders-live.com. You can support it in so many ways. You can go to the partners page, and anything that you purchase there will help us spread our message to more people, reach more people. We're very passionate about what we're doing here. And so I won't preach to that other than just say, please go to defenders-live.com. Next week, we are going to have Robin Sandoval from A Girl and a Gun on. We had Robin Sandoval on, I think, last summer sometime, but Robin wants to come on and speak a little bit about the national conference that's coming up in Colorado, and what to expect as far as the lineup this year is concerned, and classes that you guys can look forward to taking. And so that's mostly what we'll be talking about next week. I'm sure I'll pull a few other cool things out of her as well. But that's what we'll be doing next week, April 12th. Join us then, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. We hope to see you then. Until then, take care.